Hello, hello. Okay, welcome to, hopefully you're aware, we're in the Cheese and Grain, and we're here for our first panel discussion with our illustrious panel members, who will introduce themselves shortly. Exactly, let's have a bit of a cheer, please. Come on now. Thank you very much to everyone who supported this morning and the lead up to the films, and all the support that we had. Hopefully, I think we're growing and we're getting more people engaged, and I hope through that we're inspiring more people perhaps to consider change to a greener, more sustainable lifestyle. So the panel members will introduce themselves shortly. The other person I'd like to make you aware of is Bex Gilbert at the back there. So Bex is a live illustrator. That doesn't mean she's, obviously is live, but in relation, she's capturing the panel in illustration during the panel. So what I hope from that, and I'll discuss with Bex, that we'll then create a print of that, which obviously each and every one on the panel will have a copy of, and then obviously they'll be available for others at a pay what you can afford, perhaps, to help the climate pot and the work that we're doing. Okay, so I hope all your mics are live. Perhaps we can start this end, Amanda, reference to introductions. Just very brief, because obviously time is quite precious at this point in time. Yes, please.
Good afternoon, my name is Amanda Levine, and I run Earth House at Frome College.
Hello, my name is Hugh Thomas. I'm a food and farming journalist, and I also run the farmers markets in town, and I'm the founder of the Frome Food Network.
I'm Anna Sapine, I'm the MP for Frome and East Somerset.
Hello, my name is Matt. I'm the Climate Action Lead at Frome Town Council.
Hello, my name is Diana Finch. I used to run the Bristol Pound, and I wrote a book called Value Beyond Money.
Hi, my name is Rachel Wells. I'm the Operations Manager for Climate Campaigns.
Thanks, my name is Simon Latif. I am Secretary of the Green Jobs Alliance and co-author of the book Climate Jobs.
Thank you very much. Give a bit of a round of applause and welcome to the panellists. Great. Okay, that's a wonderful start. Well, I'll now hand over to Julia, who you may be aware of reference to Frome FM and the huge amount of work she does with the festival as well, to start the questions, and I shall dip in and out as and when required, perhaps to summarise and challenge.
Hello, thank you. So I'm going to start with you, Anna.
If you move forward, you might not be on camera, otherwise, sorry, it's important. Family need to know you're on.
So Anna, last year the Liberal Democrats put forward a bill, Nature and Climate Bill, which unfortunately failed this year in January. What was the Nature and Climate Bill aiming to achieve, and why did it fail?
The Climate and Nature Bill was put forward by my colleague Ross Savage. Actually, technically it wasn't the Liberal Democrat bill, though we did all support it. It's what's called a private members bill, which is a very strange arrangement to me as a new MP, where you literally get numbers pulled out of a bucket, and if you get high up in the numbers, you get to put a bill forward. And Ross was very lucky and scored very highly. And for those of you that don't know Ross, she's a world champion international rower, which she did to raise awareness of climate change. And she picked a very, very big topic. Normally for private members bill, you pick something small but achievable, and Ross really shot for the moon and tried to pick something really big. And what happened was that it got brought before Parliament, as a private members bill does. It was very well attended, it was debated, and then on that day there was a decision to be made about whether or not she pushed it to a vote, which we would have lost because Labour were being whipped against the bill. Or she could agree not to push it to a vote and to make some concessions and to go forward and work constructively with the government. She chose the latter, which I think was probably right for her because it's her bill and she genuinely wanted some change to happen. And knowing that I was coming here today, I grabbed Ross last week and asked what was happening, and unfortunately what's happening is they're very frustrated by the lack of progress by the government on this. I personally think that it's if you look at where the government is at the moment without making this political, if you look at the kind of voters they're trying to appeal to, I would humbly suggest that pushing climate change up the agenda is not something they're looking at the moment. So I feel like it's been kicked slightly into the long grass. There's talk about having a second reading on the 11th of July, but I think that may lose legislative time now because I think assisted dying may overtake it for the slot. So the bill just progresses. At the end of this parliament, if nothing's happened on it, the bill falls. It just stops existing. And you have to hope that in the next parliament, someone who gets a private member's bill wants to pick it up again. So it's a very irritating parliamentary procedure. But as Lib Dems, we're entirely behind it, we're entirely supportive, and we're really frustrated that the government isn't doing basically what it promised to do, which was to pick up on certain elements of it and make it happen.
And basically, what was it going to do?
It was hoping to legislate for certain things that governments say they're going to do, so to put some actual targets in legislation so government had to stick to them, and also to better tie together climate and nature, which tend to be conceived of as being separate but are actually quite integrated. Don't ask me any more than that, because other people in this room will know more about the contents, but that's the gist.
Thank you very much. Well, moving on to change in a slightly different way, Diana Finch here wrote a book called Value Beyond Money, and at the end of the book she talks about the difference between new economics and alternative economics as ways of looking at ways we can go forward to a sustainable future in a different way. Can you tell us about the difference between the two?
Yeah. New economics is the stuff that people talk about when they're saying we need to make a better economic system, usually. It's the stuff you'll have heard about more in the mainstream. Things like we ought to align more with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the UN SDGs. We ought to be trying to make our economy more socially just and more environmentally friendly. And it tends to within that movement, I would say, is everything from B Corps and setting up more workers' cooperatives, things of that nature, and carbon offsetting, carbon insetting, and boasting about reusable, recyclable materials and things. So that's all kind of new economics, I would say, and broadly it's green economics, if you like. Alternative economics is saying, hang on, the market economy is what got us here. And if we don't want to be here, where we are devastating our environment and creating massive inequality, not just in the UK, but if you look globally at the kind of the fallout, if you like, from our economic system, it's devastating. And if that's caused by the market economy, we can't expect a slightly different flavoured market economy to fix it. We need a completely different economic system. And the problem is, nobody is really talking about that. When you hear about the economics, if there's ever a news anchor interviewing people about economics, they always start, well, of course, what we need is economic growth. And how are you going to do it, Mr. Labour? And how are you going to do it, Mr. Conservative? How are you going to do it, Lib Dems? Maybe, if they're lucky enough to have a Green person on there, they'll also say, and how are you going to do it, the Greens? But usually there's not even a Green person on those debates. So, and this is like...
If you haven't come across the Three Horizon model, I'd just like to explain it in these terms. So we have Horizon 1, which is our current system. And we're over the halcyon days at the top, yeah? We're at the beginning, I think, of what may well prove to be a very rapid decline where we come down with a big bump. And somewhere in the utopian future, maybe we can imagine a system 3, which is just a completely different economic system, where humans live in balance and harmony with planet Earth, and we safeguard and steward planet Earth for the future. And the question is, what is Horizon 2? How do we get from where we are to this future one? And Horizon 2 is made up of two things. It's made up of H2 minus things, and they're the things which are helping the current system, which is so sick, to just keep going a bit more. And all of those things, those new economic things, like, well, maybe if we invested a bit more in labour and thought less about the capital investment, and maybe if we thought more about the environment, maybe it will be a bit less bad, and System 1 can carry on, limping on, and decline a bit more slowly. Well, what I'm interested in is, what are the H2 plus things? What are the things that are leaning into that completely different future of economics? Because I'll just finish with a definition of economics. And I don't know, hands up if you were, I don't know if any of you know this, but if you were to imagine what a definition of economics is, hands up if you think it has money in that definition. A few hands there. Hands up if you think it has market in the definition. A few more hands there. Well, it doesn't have either. Actually, economics, and no economist will tell you this because most economists are purely focused on money and markets in the current system, but actually, economics means a governance system through which we work out what resources to use, how to use them, how to produce the things that are needed, and how to get them to the people that need them. And if that's what economics is about, our current system is a dismal failure, and we need an alternative economic system.
Thank you very much, Diana. I suspect this is in the new economics section still, but Tahir, I'd like to bring you in here. You're from the Greener Jobs Alliance. Now, recently, the CBI themselves actually came out and said that net zero jobs in this country pump £83 billion into the economy. At the moment, they're supporting 237,000 full-time jobs. Why is there so much resistance to moving towards net zero jobs?
Okay, well, thanks, Julia. Firstly, just to say, and coming to an answer to that, I disagree with Diane on one point, which is that I think people are talking about alternative systems up and down the country in meetings like this. It's just that it's not the people who have the levers of power and able to do anything about it that are doing it. But I think there's plenty of discussion about it, even if it's quite abstract. But it's fantastic to have someone who's actually articulating it in a detailed way. Well, listen, I kind of wrote notes for about 20 minutes worth, so I'll do some rapid self-editing. I represent, or I'm in an organisation that represents trade unions that are seeking to promote green skills and green jobs of the future. And I have to say, that figure that you quoted, about 273,000, I mean, that's a CBI figure. To me, it's incredibly small, actually. I mean, not so worried about the 83 billion, but 273,000, we need a lot more jobs than that to do something genuine about the climate, something transformative that actually touches on every sector of our economy. And I think that figure comes from a model that of minimum change. You know, let's do our bit in each sector of the economy and maybe it will add up to something. Actually, to really combat climate change, we need to cut a whole economy, whole society approach that involves every sector. So in terms of your question about what is a green job, every job should be a green job. There are climate jobs, things that are specifically geared towards combating the climate, mitigating, adapting, etc. But every job should be green in some respect. We have a real struggle in the trade union movement at the moment. If you think back to 2019, at the time of the school strikes, I don't know about here, but certainly in my home in Portsmouth, at the time you could fill the town square with activists, campaigners, trade unionists, all clamouring for a change in order to combat the climate and the jobs that go with it. Right now we're in quite a poor place where we're having to really struggle to get climate up the agenda. I mean, the fate of the Climate and Nature Bill, which I was kind of helping to promote amongst MPs and trade unionists, I mean, it's typical of that, I think. You know, and the major parties, I won't get into the details, but let's face it, all three of the major parties are kind of converging on a place where climate is quite low on the agenda. You know, scrap net zero, Labour is quite confused and contradictory in its approach. And as you say, the Climate and Nature Bill hasn't passed, and we don't know what will happen with it when it comes up again. In that context, what kind of trade union you're in and how it views jobs is critical. I mean, there are servicing unions, which are ones that follow the prevailing wind. They say, well, what are the jobs that are likely to be on offer from those in power that are offering them, and then they follow that. And so, you know, you might say, well, can we blame them since all the major parties are converging on one place? But you get outcomes which are really quite short-term in the sense of let's defend jobs in oil and gas and in aviation, etc., rather than looking over the horizon, which is what more campaigning unions do, and saying, well, what's actually the long-term prospects for job security for workers? And actually that exists in a transformative economy where we're really looking at at transitioning from those fossil fuel-oriented industries. And just to try and keep it short, I say in terms of what are the careers. I mean, in green jobs, well, yes, it is everything, but there are two types really. There's climate jobs, which are in industry, in energy, transport, sectors like that, where we need to radically change what those sectors are about. We need to persuade workers, convince workers that their long-term security is with those, because let's face it, if you work in oil and gas at the moment, those resources are dwindling and the jobs are dwindling as well. So it's, yes, you need to protect them in the jobs they're in at the moment, but you also need to do the other job, which is to look to the long term and say, what is it, how do we secure people's work in the future, and how do we make a better society out of doing that? There are also what I call green jobs, which are in sectors like education, in care, in health, food growth, land management, and nature restoration and things like that, where we're desperately short of workers. And you know, it's true to say that if we move from a fossil fuel economy, electrification requires fewer workers. Well, there are lots of sectors that are desperate for thousands and thousands of workers, and we can supply that. But to do that, we need to have political will. We need the kind of will that's not currently on display in the corridors of power at the moment, and we need a vision of a world that is a different and better world that will provide the kind of society and the jobs that we need.
Good to hear. Well, food and farming were mentioned in there, so I'd like to turn to you next, Hugh. Somerset is very much a farming county, and you've done a lot of reporting on farming in the country, in the county, and also you run the Frome Food Network. What does sustainable farming look like in our county and beyond?
Part of me wonders if part of the problem is the word sustainable. It's quite a woolly term. And in my writing, I find myself using the word or the phrase nature friendly quite a bit. And as Anna said earlier, climate and nature is often linked. And you know, this is why a lot of us are here today. It's because we're concerned about climate change and how we can help mitigate it. And from a Somerset perspective, if we're looking at agriculture, our best crop is arguably grass. Especially, you know, within the wider southwest as well, because of the climate and the geology. And this might be news to some people, but we can't eat grass. So cows are usually quite good for that. So I'm quite keen on sort of fighting the corner of livestock in terms of using them in integrated farming systems, where we can, you know, use them in rotational systems to grow cover crops which fix the soil, so we can reduce the need for artificial fertilizer, and then use cows' muck to fertilize those fields to grow more crops. That's a very basic sort of tenet of things like regenerative agriculture. Those sort of terms that get bandied around a lot these days. And as I was saying, Somerset is particularly, you know, the kind of area in which is quite conducive to that kind of farming. And there's some really great examples of those within the county. Just recently I was writing a piece about ice cream, or rather using ice cream as an excuse to talk about farming. And Westcombe Dairy came up as a really sort of insightful example of how we transition from a fossil fuel-based agriculture, albeit one that uses animals, into one that still uses animals, but in a much more sustainable way. One example of that is traditionally in a dairy operation, like what they're doing, is that you'd use two grasses, a ryegrass and a clover. Not very deep rooting plants, pretty crap on the soil, but great for giving cows enough sugar in order to produce milk. But whereas what they're doing is they're planting 15 plus different varieties of legumes, herbs, grasses, and you know, we so often talk about diversity in our gut, in our diets in general, but also with regards to biodiversity as well. And these are much more deeper rooting plants. These are something that penetrates quite deep into the soil. So in terms of a healthier soil for that retains water better. That's a really good basis for a dairy operation. And the other thing is that they've switched from Holstein Friesian cattle, which are, as you might be familiar with, are the big black and white cows we all know and love, which really are built to pump out a lot of milk twice a day. They switched from those to much smaller cows, which are much lighter on the land. Going westwards a bit, we've got places like Gothenny Farm, just outside Bridgewater, which similarly is using livestock as a sort of integrated into their wider plan of growing some amazing grain as part of the Southwest Grain Network, which is quite a radical system of bringing together bakers, millers, as well as bread eaters as well, to try and change the system locally and then hopefully a bit more wider than that. So I'll just sum up that point by saying that there's amazing, really inspirational projects within the area that I think hopefully the rest of the country can take sort of notice of, really.
Thank you very much for you. And we haven't even talked about veganism, which is another huge subject. Amanda, can I talk to you now? So all these things, all this knowledge about climate needs to come through our schools. We've got all the young people that we're hoping are going to save us coming through school now. And you set up the Earth House project at Frome College. Tell us what that was about and how successful you've been with that.
Hi there. Firstly, I'd like to thank James and the team for inviting me to represent the voice of 1,300 extremely beautiful young people that come from Frome. It's a real privilege to be their voice today. So Earth House was set up 3 years ago based on the fact that I have been here for a while, and I thought that actually we needed to provide a vector for the voices of the young people in secondary level education, which is often seriously missed out. We do an awful lot with primary school students because there seems to be a sense that they'll buy into those things, and then we forget that we need to carry on offering that voice to secondary age students. So Earth House grew from there, and it is essentially about asking young people to be kind to themselves, each other, and the world that they are inheriting right now. So what we did was provide a chance for them to have a voice by having regular meetings. We've stepped up to enable them to work inside curriculum areas like DT, and thanks Graham for being back in the audience. DT, textiles, maths, the sciences, and Earth House isn't a person. It isn't really about the students. It's about community coming together to show each other what we're doing and to help each other understand the challenges that young people do face. So, and again, this is another moment for me to thank everybody in the audience and beyond for all the help that they've given Earth House. Your initial question was, is it working? And of course it is. Of course it has to, because we know that this is going to be fundamental to their lives. So we talked about green careers, and we are now offering at least once a year a green sustainable careers fair in March to our students that allow them to see what's happening on a broader level around their community and nationally. We've invited all sorts of people in to share what they're doing. We've talked about sustainable fashion, and through Sustainable Fashion Week, which was enormously successful. I could go on and on and on. We've got a lot of support at school for this project, so much so that I was asked to speak at the Southwest Trust Leaders meeting recently, and I think that might have helped catalyse the first thing on the agenda for all of the head teachers in the Southwest to start thinking about their carbon action plans and how we're going to support students to become a little bit wiser about how we use our finite resources going forward. So yeah, I think we are successful, but it's not perfect. And we're going to have to keep going with things like Earth House so that young people get some agency and can really start facing the challenges that they will inherit, but they can shape and change going forward. So thank you all.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Right, Rachel, right down at the end there. A place where you can go for resources and to find out all about climate is the Climate Hub in Bath. Can you tell us how that works and whether there are other climate hubs around the country yet?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so we are based in the bus station in Bath, right in the centre. We've been in operation for about 4 years, but about 2 years ago, after doing monthly pop-ups in the middle of Bath, our trustees came together and decided to create a charity. So we had the charity for a year, and that was working forward and developing and getting our own actual hub, which has been phenomenal. We moved in November, and since that point we've grown and grown. So we've done 25 events and outreach and working with other people, and we're really, really keen to be a hub in its actual name in itself. So we work with 68 partners across Baines, and we're hoping to expand outside of Baines as well, which is one of the reasons why we're here today, to showcase what's happening in all areas of climate and nature, what's going on, all the different areas that people can be involved with, volunteer with us as well if you want, come and see me afterwards. And it's just a really good way for people to come in and learn at the level that they really feel comfortable at, which is what we're really here for. Now, we're a local charity for local people, and I say this quite often, and I said this yesterday, so I do sound like I'm from Royston Vasey all the time, just constantly talking about being local. But that's where we're really focused. There's lots of national campaigns, there's lots of things going on, and of course we showcase them and we piggyback off the back of them. So we do things like Secondhand September, and we do those things to raise awareness, but we're also trying to look at what's happening locally and what people can do at a local level, at their comfort level, and where they feel that they best would spend their time, or to be involved, or even just to pop in and ask a few questions about what's going on, some myth busting, and to be with people that are like-minded and sometimes not like-minded, but that's how we can grow and that's how we can really work together. So currently we are the hub in Baines, and we are hoping to satellite out into other areas and sort of grow a real network. Outside of that, there is the Climate Alliance, I think it is, where you can go onto their website and have a look, and that's kind of how we started, really. It's called the Climate Emergency Centres, so if you go onto Climate Emergency Centres, you can see where they are across the country. It's slightly different to what we do, but we are in partnership with them in how we work, and that will give you a broad spectrum of what's happening across the whole country as well. So yeah, there's a lot going on here, there's a lot going on across the country, but we're really here to champion what is happening in this local area across all areas, because it's really important that that's what we cover, and we don't just stay within an echo chamber. We come outside of that and bring people in and share everything that we know. We're definitely not experts, and we want to hear from experts. So we are an open community organisation that really focus on you guys.
Thank you very much. So everyone go down to the Bath Climate Hub. Right, now we're sort of veering right round to politics, both local and national. So Matt, you're our climate lead. And one of the things I'd like to ask you is, what do you think about the idea of an international film festival here in Frome? All about climate?
Yes, we think it's absolutely brilliant, and Frome Town Council over the years has been absolutely delighted to support the film festival. I think for many of us working on climate, our mantra is think global, act local, and a lot of the initiatives that we're doing in Frome are obviously very local, but to have this international insight and ideas come to the town is incredibly important, and I think can really invigorate our work. And I think a lot of us struggle with the fact that in the mainstream media and a lot of the information we're exposed to on a daily basis, either the climate isn't given sort of due attention, or there's a lot of misinformation out there. And I think a lot of the voices in the films being shown at the film festival are marginalised. So I think anything that we can do to elevate those voices and help people hear the stories of what's going on around the world is just super important.
So at a local political level, how much can a council, a town council, actually move against climate change? Because we set up in 2015, Frome declared itself a climate emergency here and committed to becoming carbon neutral by 2030. How far along that line are we?
We have been making really good progress in Frome, and there have been very challenging headwinds from national government, and I mean, just for example, things like wind turbines were banned on land throughout the whole time of the last government. And things like that can make it very difficult, because I think when we look at the energy mix for Frome, undoubtedly having wind turbines would be a really big part of us achieving net zero. But progress is being made, and Frome's a great place to do this work, because there's there's such an appetite for it in the town. And organisations like Sustainable Frome really have pushed forward a lot of new thinking and ways of living in Frome. And so the work that we do at Frome Town Council really builds on all the community groups and what they're doing. And part of our role feels to coordinate and help catalyse things that are happening already in town. So we're definitely making progress. There's huge amounts more to be done. And alongside, when people think about climate action, I think often we're thinking about mitigation, which is reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So the work that we're doing on that is helping homes be more energy efficient, and then looking at plugging in more renewable energy. But we're also shifting focus now to climate adaptation. So on Tuesday of last week, we held a climate adaptation workshop for Frome, and we were going to do it at Frome Town Hall, but we were so oversubscribed we booked the cheese and grain. So there were about 130 people in here all workshopping how do we adapt to the changes that are coming down the track. And I think that's a really demonstrates the situation we're in, which is that, throughout all of my career working on climate, which is about 25 years, greenhouse gas emissions have been increasing year on year over that whole time, and they continue to increase. So for a lot of people, when you say, we've all got to reduce our emissions, it can leave a lot of people cold, because the reality is emissions are increasing at a global scale. And adaptation is where it really gets real for all of us. When we start thinking, what do we do if there's an extreme heat wave? Where would we gather in the town? Where's the shade? Do we know people that would have clean water or batteries if a lot of things we depend on go down? So yeah, we're planning for the future and doing everything we can to get ready.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Right. Thank you all very much. I'd like to come back to Anna now. So, I'm sorry. Sorry. Okay. So that everyone can see. They must see you, Anna. So obviously you live in a very climate-aware constituency. What can you do as a parliamentarian, and what can we do to change laws in Parliament that will help us along the road to sustainability?
So firstly, I live in a very climate-aware town. There are definitely bits of the constituency which are not as engaged on this issue as Frome is, because Frome is a world leader in all these things, we know. But and I think one of the really good things that could come out of this, and I was interested that Climate Hub Baines is here, because obviously part of my constituency is in Somerset and part of it's in Baines, is try and share some of this learning and this work you're doing with other bits of the constituency where they have the same levels of concern about climate and nature as you do, but they maybe have just a different lived experience of how it affects them, and they have a different perception of, just because of the different natures of the areas and the kind of backgrounds that they come from. And I'm talking about both kind of towns like Midsummer Norton, but also some of the more rural bits of the constituency, like places like Evercreech. So I think it'd be wonderful if we could try and, as a constituency, work to kind of bring some of this knowledge kind of elsewhere. And also we talked about possibly trying to bring some of it to Parliament as a way of engaging with other parliamentarians and bringing some of the films and things to Parliament. In terms of what you can do, I mean, as Fromies, you've got an MP you can lobby, but I have to say you're pushing a relatively open door on this with me. You don't need to persuade me that it's important or that there's a degree of urgency. I would mention is there's some young people in the room that I don't expect you to save us. I think that was mentioned earlier. I think we should be showing some leadership and saving you, frankly. And I and all other MPs would love to hear more from young people in our constituency. So if you can persuade your parents to let you write me a letter or drop me an email, I'd be really happy to hear what you think about climate and nature. One of the things I think needs to happen is that I think the government needs to know how you feel. And there's two ways you can do that. One is you can do the kind of things you're probably doing. You can write to the Environment Minister, you can write to the Nature Minister, you can go and protest in London. It does make an impact. Politicians do pay attention when they can hear something. The other slightly party political point I would make is that if anyone here is a Labour Party member, I would recommend you write to them and express your dissatisfaction at their current attitude or importance they're placing on climate and nature. These are the things that make politicians sit up and listen. But actually, as Fromies, you are very active and engaged, and I do hear a lot from you about these issues, and I'm very pleased to hear from you. But I think we just have to persuade other people that there's a lot of, as you mentioned, there's a lot of scepticism about climate and nature, a really unhelpful kind of right-wing narrative emerging that it's not real, we don't really need to worry about it. I'm going to make the wild assumption that no one in this room is a Jacob Rees-Mogg fan. I heard during the election that I went and knocked on a primary school teacher's door in Peasdown St John, and they'd been represented by Jacob Rees-Mogg until the last election, and they said they'd done a whole term of recycling with the kids, and they'd asked him to come in and talk about the fact they'd done recycling. And he said to the kids, look, it's lovely that you've done recycling, but until China and India stop pumping out emissions, there's really no point you doing anything, it won't make any difference. And the teacher said this just undermined her entire term of work with the kids, and she was furious. I think if we have people like that in leadership positions, kind of spreading the word that it doesn't really matter, that somehow doing things that are positive to climate is not possible to happen with growth, that net zero is not really a thing, climate change isn't really a thing, that's really dangerous. And I think what we need to do is work amongst our families and friends to keep saying, no, this is important. You can achieve growth, whatever growth looks like, whether it's economic growth or happiness growth or whatever, however we want to measure growth, but it can be achieved along with positive things for climate and nature. We just have to keep making those arguments among the many people that aren't in this room who aren't convinced and aren't engaged by these arguments.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Wonderful. Scratching the surface, but you've done a fantastic job. So I'm handing back now to...
Thank you very much. What an interesting conversation and discussion and challenging. Maybe I can just... Because the bit that I always struggle with, which never seems to get mentioned, either on TV, radio or others, is consumption. Is the continuous consumption. And this is where we also need to look at individually, you look in the mirror and you look at your actions, and actually, why do we consume? Do we need to consume, or can I make a different decision? Because I always struggle again, it's about consuming, it's about growing, it's about growth. Current government is about growth, not sustainable growth, growth. At almost all cost. And Diane, you talked about a different system. And again, I don't know, I think individually we may not think it makes a decision, but us not clicking for the latest shipment through Amazon to China or whatever else does make a difference. There's 9 billion of us around the world in one shape or form. If you don't click, then they won't produce. I know it's not as simple as that, and obviously there's lots of other pressures, government instruments. How do you then, endorse that, enable that, construct that going forward? And the other thing, again, linked to films, is how do we make it visible? And I don't know, I can challenge you all, or you can come back and look at all of your TV channels and look whether you've got any program on there at all that will help you change. Not report on the last whale, the last whatever the latest catastrophe is, but actually help you to change, to give you information. We talked about shared learning. How do we share learning? How do we share all this wonderful experience in Frome? How do we create a network? This is where perhaps, whether we like AI or not, there's obviously challenges around that, data centers, water usage, etc. But how do we connect and share knowledge? Otherwise, everybody starts from zero, when in fact your neighbor could be on already at 10, 20, 30, 100% reference to the delivery of. So there's a connection, like we've done with films, there's a connection of knowledge, there's a connection of infrastructure, there's a connection of people. And I think connecting people, a lot of the times the reason why we can't do it, and whether you're aligned to parties or other routes, let's park that, is that they probably don't want us to connect. Because we're a lot more powerful together. We'll have a lot more power globally together if we connect. And we share, and we inspire, and we support skills, knowledge, and expertise. So I guess if a general conversation or general comment, we have a little bit of time about, what would you change if you had the opportunity? So each of you, please, maybe we'll start this end and just, what would you change? And then maybe, perhaps we'll get into the debate of how we can change. We can do that as a follow-up workshop, perhaps, and look at, so individually, what would you like to change? And how can we then help to improve and create that more sustainable? I'll use the word Hugh, but because it needs to be sustainable in all shapes or forms, whatever that definition is, and viable for us and future generations. So, Amanda, perhaps if people are happy to answer or to discuss.
From a teaching point of view, I would... this is going to be difficult because I'm going to mention the money and the finance side of things. I would start by enabling every single school in this beautiful country that we live in to have far more funding to provide a curriculum that is cohesive, that's fast moving, that allows us to adapt and educate quickly. And I would start to employ people that want that to happen too. I'd want a much more cohesive strategy at school to help our future generations thrive.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think, to answer your question, James, I think that's kind of what we were looking at when the Frome Food Network formed in 2021, was that idea of partly knowledge sharing. How do we kind of separate ourselves from the overarching narratives and start to focus in on some of the community narratives that we've got going around, especially within Frome and the wider area, around food. And I think what's quite beautiful about the Food Network is it sort of actually started off more around small local food businesses and how they can network together and create their own narratives and stories. But what it sort of evolved into is people coming together who have a natural interest in food and want to direct that positive energy into collaborating in some way or another. And that's brought about projects such as Canteen, which is a pop-up pay-as-you-can restaurant, which we're currently holding in Trinity Church.
Yep.
And that's sort of pure grassroots. No one who started the project, it's about 10 of the staff, have any, or very little, apart from the chefs, that is, experience within a food business. And just having that opportunity with a bit of funding from the Climate Action Fund to help it through has just created something so positive, and it's really nice to see in the newspapers against all the doom and gloom. Yeah, that would be my contribution.
Okay, thank you.
I change our electoral system, and let me just quickly explain why. Well, if you look at the makeup of the House of Commons now, most Labour MPs agree climate change is a problem. So do we, so do the Greens, so actually do a good chunk of the Conservative Party, so did SNP, Plaid Cymru, right? But the nature of our political system is that it's this one or it's that one, and it's perceived as being a 5-year cycle of this one or that one, and everyone's oppositional. And if we had a proportional representation system, you would kind of know that whatever whatever makeup of government you had, probably you'd have a majority of people that thought climate was important, and you could put some long-term strategies into play, which you kind of knew whatever the makeup of the next government was, it was likely that they'd probably stick with those strategies. And I worry that as long as we have this crappy electoral system, sorry children who I realised were there after I said it, it's not going to change, and it's not going to change on climate, it's not going to change on social care, it's not going to change on energy infrastructure, because they're all seen as too difficult to deal with, and so they get put to the back. They get paid lip service and they don't get dealt with, and I really worry about how that changes under our current system.
Yep, true.
The main sustainability programme in Frome at the moment is called Green and Healthy Frome, and it's been very successful, and part of the sort of underlying philosophy is looking at the connection between personal health and planetary health. And once you start thinking about it and looking at it, then it feels quite obvious that, of course, many of the things that are good for the planet are also good for ourselves. And I feel like often when we're thinking about creating change and shifting to a sustainable world, it's framed in a very negative way, and the emphasis can be on telling people they shouldn't go on holiday or fly or things like that. And whilst there might be truth in that, it can just put people... people are very resistant to those kind of messages, and also it ignores the fact that we need to change the system, and focusing on individual change isn't always that helpful. So I would really like to see change focus on how can we improve people's lives and make people healthier and happier, where that is in tune with and aligned with sustainability gains. So just one example is that I think nowadays people are generally quite frazzled The economy is constantly being G'd up to work harder and faster, and we want economic growth at all costs. And people don't have time to step back and think about the planet or what they could do or anything like that. And a 4-day working week basically is brilliant for everyone. And I think that if people work less, then it's a way of slowing the economy down. And we might want to try and shift to a steady state economy or even overall reduce the size of the economy. And also, if people are working 4 days a week rather than 5, then they get time back to do things like connect with their community or take action or just maybe even just be in nature. And I think those kind of shifts in people's lives can really help us to tune out of the mindset, which is just endless consumption and working, and realizing that there's more to life and that we don't just need to earn money and spend it in order to be happy.
Thank you.
Damn it, you've stolen what I was going to say, because I was going to say something very similar. I realized a little while ago when I was thinking about it that you can use wealth as a kind of shortcut, and the people who are making and spending lots of money are the people who have extracted most and caused the most negativity through their market economy actions and are then creating the most damage by their consumption. So, who was it once said, blessed are the poor? It's really true that the less money we try and earn and the less money we spend, the less damage we are doing, the less consumption we are doing. If everyone's consumption goes down, then there is less reason to make all this stuff. If we all gave up Coca-Cola tomorrow, lots of things might happen. Obesity and stuff and diabetes might reduce, but Coca-Cola would go bust. I think we often look to politicians and, big corporates to lead the way. But the reality is that the only way we can change the economic system is by each of us doing something a bit different. And we need to collaborate, and we need to understand that far from the politicians having the power, we have the power. If we don't all behave like sheep and click on the Amazon Prime Purchase Now button, then actually we are collaborating to change the economic system instead of being the good economic actors that they want us to be. So that's what I try and do. This is a handmade suit. I cut my own hair. I cut down my working hours as much as possible so that I am earning as little as possible and doing as much as possible outside the economic system.
Hey, well done. Thank you. Rachel.
I think most of the things that I was thinking of have already crept up the table towards me, but from our point of view at the Hub, we are here to, the good buzzwords of empowerment and give people that, that opportunity and that chance. And I think from our point of view, making those, what our big campaign is small change, big differences, very similar to what we've has already been spoken along the panel, just allows people to feel that they have some form of control. I feel like in this whole sphere, there's a lot of people, and a lot of people come to us in the Hub and say, I don't know where to start, I don't know how to feel, I feel so crushed by everything that's happening in the world. And I feel like if we can take a bit back of ourselves, feel like we have a bit more control in what we're doing and make those small changes within our life, very similar to what's already been mentioned, then we'll be able to see the wood for the trees in what's happening and notice that actually all our small efforts together do create something really powerful and really meaningful, not only for our communities but outside, and will grow as the movement grows in itself. So it's more about us working together as a community, which has been fractured for many years for multiple reasons, coming together and being supportive to each other to make sure that we can, make changes collectively.
Thank you.
Thanks. Well, just in response to your points, James, it really strikes me the point about consumption. And from a jobs perspective, I think it's really imperative that we move the workforce from a workforce that is oriented around producing stuff for people to buy to a workforce that is oriented towards providing services for each other and for our communities. That fundamental shift needs to take place in order to actually put into action a lot of the things that people on the panel have said. And I'll just finish by echoing, the kind of comments that people have made in this in response here, which is that to make those changes happen, with the best will in the world, is not going to come from the top down. It comes from the bottom up. It comes from people like us in this room and others all across the country getting together to make these things happen.
Thank you very much. And I will just ask Julia, what's your view, perhaps? Well,
I agree with everything that everyone said here. If someone can come up with a plan, putting it in motion tomorrow, let me know, and I'll do my best to follow you.
Okay, so what we also need to do then is lovely discussion, lovely panel, lovely audience, actions. So what are we going to do? Can we stay together as a group? Can we form something together that we can then actually help to drive forward? Because I don't like just to talk. I need to, probably like lots of others on the panel, I need action, which is why we did the festival, self-funded, with our co-funder here as well, because we believe in it and we need to do it. So there isn't time to discuss and wait for the next policy. I will just quickly touch on, I would like a 3% of GDP to defend our future. Not defence, but ring fence from politicians, with all due respect, which is then enshrined, that we can then make sure that that funding is always available, irrespective of the political flavour.
The point's been made that stuff comes from the ground up. Any politician knows things come from the ground up. You're deluded if you're a politician and you think you're leading anyone. You're responding to your constituents and you're responding to the public. So if the public tell you they want something hard enough and loud enough, then they'll get it. What the problem is, people don't understand they have that agency, I think.
Yeah. So we need a petition, we need something. So in relation to actions, are we agreed that perhaps we could come back together in 2 or 3 months' time? Maybe link it to your adaptation work, Matt, obviously, and, how do we then... So that's one thing. Perhaps we'll come back out and we'll see if we can get you re-engaged in a couple of months' time. 2, Anna, we did sort of... Sorry, you almost had time for a drink then. Apologies. About going to Westminster to see whether we can showcase the work we're doing here, which again, maybe not just, it will be us to start off with, and I'm sure then other groups around the country, their best practice, and then how do we connect and how do we share and how do we join up so that we then have more climate hubs and others, which is distilling and connecting through our councils and others and groups of how then we can accelerate the change. Go on, Matt, yes, please.
If it's okay, I'd just like to plug a couple of events. If people are thinking, how do I...
Are they all relevant? Hopefully they are, yes.
They're all relevant. So Tuesday in the town hall, we have a renewable energy entrepreneur, Howard Johns, talking about how we could turn Frome into a people's power station. So please come to that if you're interested in renewable energy. And just to signpost, that Big Green Week is coming up in June, and there's lots of activities happening all around Frome. And if you'd like to find out more about that, then you can go onto the Discover Frome website, and there'll be lots of ways that people can link up and get involved. Okay, thank you for that. So lastly then, we have 7 minutes. Any top tips from the... What would you, I'll just share one quickly from myself. So in relation, if you've got a water tank, which actually then heats up or whatever else, may not be the best way, it's what we've got. And when I then turn on the hot water tap for washing up, for example, traditional way, there's a lot of cold water that goes down the sink. So I collect it in jugs. So if you do the same thing, you get about 3 litres of water every time you want to do the washing up. So that then it gets recycled. I just thought a nice little easy bite-sized activities that you can help and people can make little steps to go forward. Any little steps that you would share? You don't have to if you haven't got, if they're all big steps.
Let's keep things positive and healthy. Keep our conversations positive and healthy, particularly with our young. They need us to lead the charge. They need us to stay positive and healthy.
Yes. Thank you very much. Any other top tips?
I would just say that in an era of faceless corporations, if you want to know where your food's from, if you want to meet your farmer, come down to the local farmers market, whether that's, if it's your local one, then, or if Frome is your local one, then we're on Board Cross every second Saturday of the month. There's my plug as well.
Thank you.
My top tip is to go to Denude in Frome, which is an amazing reuse recycle shop, and they also, for anyone that has makeup, they do the best toweling pads for getting your makeup off, so you never have to use those terrible wipes. You can just use the pads. And Sally Hughes, the beauty expert, recommends those pads very strongly as well. So get to Denude for your toweling pads and other reusable things.
There we are. Thank you very much. Matt?
I would invite people to think about what they're doing with their money. Apparently people are more likely to get divorced than change their bank. But there's a real range in how banks use your money and if they're investing in fossil fuels or not. So you can check, and if you're with a not great bank, then change. And actually Nationwide is a pretty good one on the climate front, and they obviously have a branch in Frome. So that's something to think about. And also, if you're lucky enough to have money in savings, then it's worth checking to see if you can invest it in your home, either by making your home more energy efficient, also called retrofitting, or putting solar panels on the roof. You might find that if your home could do with an upgrade, that you'd get a better return on the money than just leaving it sitting in a savings account.
Thank you very much. Wow.
I've changed my browser so that I don't get ads the whole time. I think ads, and as well things like films and, not the films we've got here, which are exactly what we need, but the majority of entertainment that we see on our screens just serves to normalize our current consumption focused lives. And just take as much of a break as possible from all the stuff telling you how to be a normal, proper human being.
Can you share the browser name?
Oh, I use DuckDuckGo,
Okay.
but I think there are others that are equally good.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to shamelessly plug the Climate Hub. Come and see us. We have all of our partner organisations in Bath. We have them all up on a board. We have multiple events every month with our organisations and with local community groups and people that are coming on. So if you are looking to make small changes, big changes, retrofit your house, learn more about gardening, any sort of area that you're looking for, come and see us and we can direct you in the right way. Volunteering, all those sorts of things, that's what we're here for.
Last year we managed to secure agreement at the trade union conference that there will be a year of trade union action on the climate, and that year is to commence in September or October and to last for 12 months, obviously. Now, if you are in a union, then find out what your union is doing to contribute to that year of action. Or if your branch is doing something, find out what your branch is doing. If they're not doing anything, ask them to do something. And if you can't find any information at all, you're welcome to get in touch with me and I can point you in the right direction. There's a huge document being compiled of actions that will be taking place both nationally and locally in support of that year of action.
Okay, thank you very much. And probably linked to... Film Festival and the film collective, as it were, Climate Collective. We're also here, just like Rupert and Alan today, at the end of this panel. We're here to film community projects. So we're happy to film free of charge community projects to help to promote you and your work to attract more people to your organisations. So again, we're not there to compete with large productions, but certainly short films, which we've done lots of. And I'm sure some of that is linked to radio as well, with Frome FM and the wonderful work they're doing. So we're here, please use us. So talk about your trade union activities. We'll turn up, we'll help to promote, and we'll help to film. And maybe some of those in the room, Abby, Tom and others from Wiltshire College who've come along and supported. We've had 7 students involved this festival, from photography and video and others. I'm sure they would like to get involved and to start being more active and support from that point of view. Okay, are there no more further comments? We are 1 minute before time. Hopefully, what I would like to do, yes, Julia's lining me up with something here. So the other thing we did, which we thought would be a good idea, because we've got a lot of volunteers and a lot of time and a lot of money, haven't we, Julia? Sherlock and Pages, and I'm not sure whether they're represented here or not, but one of our wonderful bookshops sponsored a competition. So we thought, again, music, we do a bit of music, obviously, supporting the musicians and their work. We support film and community groups and others, but also part of this multi-sensory engagement and how do you get people engaged in climate, etc., or raise awareness, is storytelling. And we also need to look at, and Anna, maybe it's a separate conversation, how do we get the narrative changed in documentaries, in films, in programs, especially our our wonderful BBC, which I think we own or we're part of. Maybe there's a way of going in there. But anyway, in relation to, we did a competition for storytelling, essays and art competition, and we have some winners. We have some wonderful submissions from various local schools. I don't know whether Claire's here. Claire Val from Rhodes. She was the... there we are, look, waving at the back. Am I allowed to say Miss Nerdle, Mrs. Nerdle, or are you still nerdling? A little bit of nerdling. Okay, so those are plastic little nerdles which get swept around and people need to try and keep control of them. So we do have 3 winners, and I don't know whether, Anna, you're happy and you have time. Have we got any of the... Well, I better read out the winners, perhaps, might be useful. Any drum rolls? We got any drum rolls we can have, perhaps? So if I pass along the laurels for the winner of, or the winners of, we've got 4 winners. Is that right? Have I got that right?
We've got 2 prize winners and 2 runners-up.
2 prize winners, 2 runners-up.
Are they coming around the
Well,
back?
we need to see who, maybe if we read out the names, we'll see who we've got, if anybody is here. And then we can, one, orchestrate a way that they can safely come up on stage and we can then do the awards, if that's possible.
Do you want me to read the names out?
Please.
Okay, right. So the winner of the art/essay storytelling competition, there's several winners. This is the same. Yes, okay, I'll just keep going. One of the winners is Solomia Taran. Is Solomia here? Yes, I can see one wave. Come on.
Right, what we'll do, if you'll come up in a second, at least we know we're here. You're here.
Great. Hang on there.
Okay.
Hold that thought.
Yep.
The next winner is Ellie Clivier. Ellie Clivier? Ellie here? Yes?
Right.
We can't, just so you know, we can't really see anything. So yes, great. Thank you. Just do wave.
All right,
okay, fine.
Okay, don't worry, we'll okay, yeah.
The next winner is Dougie Goodwin. Is Dougie here? No, no, Dougie. Solomia, you're going to get all the star glory here. You played a blinder. And the final winner is Jack Fisher. Jack's here, yay!
Right, I'll pass over the microphone. Let me just guide them up the stairs.
I'll go down the front of the step. That's going to be easier.
There's no steps up there. Yeah, don't. Are you sure? Okay. Will a microphone reach down the bottom? Claire, will that? No, they'll come down. Anna will come down. Can you?
Yep.
Don't pull too. Right. Okay. Have we got cameras, photographers? Where are Chloe's there with camera?
Solomia? Solomia? How old are you, Solomia? You're 8?
Right, Anna, would you like to speak into the...
What do you want me to say? Do I need to say anything specific, or am I just... Sorry, I feel underprepared for this. Okay, sorry, right, so... Sorry. Right, so Solomia, did you guys write a story for this? You drew a picture. That's fantastic. Shall I present you with your certificate? Here you go. Ready? Round of applause for Solomia, please. Oh, and I think you're getting a prize as well. Excellent. Thank you ever so much. That's excellent. And Jack, did you draw a picture or did you do a story?
Both really. And I wrote a story, 200 words precisely if you don't count the title and the other thing.
Yeah.
But I forgot what it was.
That's amazing. I'm very glad you were precise about the word count. Can we have a big round of applause for Jack? That's fantastic. Thank you, Jack. Do you want to hold your stuff? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. All round of applause. Right, we better just round. You there, Julia, with the microphone. Oh, right. Okay, it'll be me then. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for your time, patience. Obviously, it's a very smooth operation up here. We planned that many hours of training and practice. Now, Julia, this is your farewell, I think, or stepping back slightly reference to.
Yes. So we need a fantastic team for next year. So anyone who'd like to step up and be part of the team,
well, we've got all the volunteers here. You can't actually, you didn't realise, you can't leave until you've actually signed up. We have names, address, phone numbers. No, we haven't. But we're always looking for volunteers. I hope you understand a little bit more about who we are, what we're trying to do. And the team that have been involved, Sabrina and others, and Anna and all the others involved in the process of as part of our journey. You know, we will be potentially looking for grants, Anna, as we go forward. Not saying you got funding, but you know, to make sure. And then Matt, you know, we obviously want to be closer to the council, and we should be a voice and a vehicle, hopefully, to support locally and connect globally. That's my other challenge: is how do we connect to all these other wonderful organisations that are doing things maybe better than us in some respects, and how do we share that and bring that in and learn? So, once again, thank you very much to the panel. Thank you for everyone involved. Thank you. And we do have, just in case you haven't had enough of us, there's a screening on the 22nd. So Charlie will be screening her latest film, and we've got IKEA, which is quite an interesting one. IKEA Likes Wood. Quite an interesting investigative film by a Norwegian professor. Trees chopped down every minute of every day. So they're just asking questions, and it's quite an interesting film. So that then will be there with Charlie's film next week at the Frome Town Council. Thank you for hosting and supporting. And then on next Sunday, we have the awards event of the wonderful climate... Oh, I had one of those, didn't I? It's out there in the bag. Okay. Anyway, look at our website. There is a picture of Anthony Rogers and his wonderful local awards that he creates every year. And so, yes, we'll be doing that for 10 hours next Sunday, if you feel the urge to come along, with musicians, meditation, sound baths, the eco infrastructure. Oh, we got a hand up here. Sorry. The time, that starts at 10 o'clock next week. Oh, the film in the evening. So yes, so we've got later in the day, so we've got the awards 5 till 7. We open at 10 o'clock. We've got eco artists and others. Then we've got Dreamscape, the film later in the evening, narrated by Kate Winslet, a UK premiere. So an Austrian director has allowed me to use that for next Sunday. And the film starts 6:30 on the 22nd for Charlie's film, if you're asking about that one. Is that all right? Have I answered all questions?